We acknowledge that Mount Allison University is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. This land is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship signed centuries ago. We recognize that many of our alumni, students, faculty, and podcast guests live in communities beyond the Mi'kma'ki, across Turtle Island and around the world. As we engage in conversation, reflection, and learning through this podcast, we invite all listeners to reflect on the lands they call home and the Indigenous peoples who have cared for them since time immemorial. As treaty people, we share a responsibility to engage respectfully with this land and with each other, to listen, to learn, and to honor the truths and histories that shape our shared future. Hi, everyone. It's Carolle de Ste-Croix here. Today, we're joined on When Ducks Leave the Pond, the Mount Allison Alumni Podcast, by Mount Allison political science grad and rising CBC Nova Scotia reporter Celina Aalders. Celina brings her sharp instincts and deep Nova Scotia roots to every broadcast. With a master's of media at Western, she's proving why she's one of Canada's most promising young journalists. Welcome, Celina.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Well, I always start off the podcast with, what's your OG Mount A story? How did you get here, and from where did you arrive from? I'm assuming Nova Scotia.
Yes, well, I was born and raised just outside of Halifax and grew up here. And I really didn't even know Mount Allison existed until I want to say late high school. I came for an open house visit and I really fell in love with the campus, as cliche as that sounds. But something about arriving in Sackville and Mount A campus in the fall is just something special. So, um, yeah, I really, as soon as I arrived, I knew that that's where I wanted to go, and the rest is history.
It's funny you call it you say the rest is history. I think I've heard that very same, Mount A OG story from generations of Allisonians. The
Oh,
minute they
really?
walked on campus, it's like, okay, this is home for me.
Yeah,
Now,
it's just the feeling you get.
yeah, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
happening right now as we're recording this. The students are just arriving back to campus, so it's a great feeling. How did you choose political science at Mount A? Was there a moment when you thought, oh, yeah, this is what I need to study to get me thinking about the world in a way that will connect me to journalism, or did journalism come later?
Journalism came a bit later. I didn't always know exactly what I wanted to do, but I kind of had a rough idea. And the reason I chose political science was because I knew it was something that could take me down many different paths. And so I wanted to pick something, first of all, that I was interested in, but second of all, that I knew could keep my options open in the future. And I want to say that interest really has been with me for a long time. I've always been interested in politics and public policy, in current affairs, and just what's going on in the world. My grandfather, and my grandmother actually immigrated to Nova Scotia from Lebanon with my mother and my uncle, during the 70s as the Civil War was escalating. And so, of course, he always remained very connected to his home country and to his roots. And so we spent a lot of time there at their house growing up, not in Lebanon, but at their house. And the news was always on. And whether it was CNN or Al Jazeera or what have you, I really understood and appreciated from a young age the importance of knowing and being connected to what's going on in the world. And so we didn't really watch cartoons when we would go visit. We would watch the news, and he would explain to me what we were seeing and what was unfolding. And it wasn't, of course, pretty. More often than not, it was quite devastating. But I think he understood the importance of kind of informing and educating us even as young children. And so I think that's a huge reason why I've always been so interested in politics. And then the natural transition into media was kind of a no-brainer for me once I really started to think about it. Um, yeah, and I mean, media is political. I can't think of a story that I've done lately that isn't political in some way, shape, or form. And so I feel like those, industries really do connect. And it was certainly a good foundation for where I am today.
Were there professors or mentors at Mount A who really encouraged your curiosity, much like your grandparents did, in terms of your storytelling or your path towards media?
Yes, and he knows who he is. Dr. Mario Levesque is certainly one of my favorite professors that I've ever had. I was lucky enough to have him for, gosh, I want to say 3 or 4 classes in third and fourth year. And then ultimately, he was my supervisor for an independent study that I did in my fourth year. And he was so encouraging to all of his students. It didn't matter what any of us wanted to do. He just said, go for it. And he really just got us thinking about the world and asking questions in a way that I hadn't experienced with any other professors or teachers before. And so when it came time for all of us to kind of start thinking about where we would end up or jobs or grad school, he was a great sounding board, but he always said, you can do whatever you want and I will support you. Um, and just go for it. We keep in touch and he reads my stories, he watches my stories. Um, and so it's really great to have that mentor, like you say, and that he's played that role for many years now, and I'd imagine many other students have had the same experience with him, because he's great.
Indeed, I've heard very similar stories from many of his students about how, it can be 5, 10 years later, and all of a sudden they'll get a note from him on LinkedIn saying, "I'm so proud of you. I've been following your career." I mean, what more do you want in life that someone that you looked up to and taught you still follows your career? It's fantastic.
Oh, he's so sweet, and yeah, he uses the word proud, which it just feels so good.
It does. It
Yeah.
does. Now, one of the things Mount A is known for is friendships. It's kind of key to who we are. Alumni will often talk about the friends they made on campus and the importance of that. For you, in terms of when you look back, what do those friendships mean to you?
Those friendships that I'm made at Mount A mean everything. I am one of those cliche people who will say the same thing. The friendships that you make at Mount A are just truly irreplaceable. I mean, it's such a small town where you just bond so quickly with the people around you, and you're kind of forced to make these connections and make these friends based on proximity alone, which I think really does create a really special bond. And, the friends I made on day one are still my friends today, and I know will be for many, many years to come. And even though we all don't live in the same city anymore, we have people kind of all over the place and doing all sorts of things. Everyone's so supportive of one another, and it's really cool to just see where everyone is going in life and watch them find their passions and the way they support me. And it's just so incredible. Like I truly don't know what I would do without the people that I met at Mount A.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to dig a little deeper in that transition from Mount A poli sci grad
Mhm.
to journalism, doing your graduate work in journalism. When was that decision made, and how did you know where to go and what kind of media program you wanted to take?
I would say that decision was made third, fourth year. I was really starting to think back about, what was in the back of my mind growing up. And it was always something that I thought was really fascinating and cool to be a reporter, but I never necessarily knew how realistic it might be. I didn't know anyone in my life who had been in journalism or media in general. So um, when I started researching, the different paths you can take, of course, King's is a go-to for many people who are interested in journalism. And I think for me, I wanted to go somewhere else just to kind of experience living in another province. Um, so I found the program at Western University in London, and that's the Masters of Media in Journalism and Communications. And for some reason, I just felt like it would be a good fit. It was a 1-year program. It was quite intense because it was a master's program that was just kind of all in one swoop. And then there was also an internship component to it at the end, which also really appealed to me. And so I went there. It was very hands-on. We had a studio where all of our classes were. We had all the gear, everything we could have needed to learn the skills to become journalists. And so it was a really good experience there as well. And then I came home to do my internship at CBC Nova Scotia. And luckily it just worked out there and I've been working there since then.
Well, I think it's probably more than luck. I think you were amply qualified, and they saw the same thing that we saw in you,
Oh,
and that
thank
Dr.
you.
Levesque saw in you. So that's fantastic. When you think back on your years at Mount A, what's that one memory that makes you smile every time?
Well, I mentioned my friends and how much they mean to me already, but I swear this one story will go down in our history books because even when we still get together, we always tell this story and we always laugh and we always smile. And I want to say it was the first or second day of orientation week. And we were this big group and we were all living in Campbell Hall and we had just met. But, we were all chatting and we were standing on the steps of Convocation Hall and we were wearing our bright green and yellow t-shirts, all decked out for orientation week. And we were about to start the next activity. And one of our friends, Nathan, just kind of looked around and said, "So, is this the gang? Is this the crew?" And, we kind of all laughed and smiled. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking, we haven't even started classes yet. Certainly, who knows what's going to happen? We're going to join clubs and sports and meet people in our programs. And the people I meet on the first day aren't going to be, necessarily my gang, my club, my best friends. And that same group, we're still all friends today.
Your orientation group?
They weren't our orientation group. It was like all the people that we were in res with,
Wow.
in
Wow.
residence. And so, but we were all just kind of hanging out one day and we were cl really clicking and getting along and, telling each other, where are you from and all this stuff. Like it was so cool. And I just thought surely that, we're all going to go our separate ways and we're going to meet other people and we're going to bond with, different groups and stuff. But pretty much everyone that was standing there that day, we're all still connected and still see each other and
Oh,
are so
that's
close.
beautiful, Selena.
Yeah.
That's a good. I love that.
It's such a good story. We always tell it and we always reminisce and we always smile. I swear at every one of our weddings, that's going to be the toast.
That's fantastic. Let's get into the CBC stuff. Let's get into your career a bit. Now, you've been in Nova Scotia working recently, but you know, as someone who lives next to Nova Scotia, who has family next to Nova Scotia, it doesn't. There's no doubt that the past 5 years have been very difficult for Nova Scotia
Mhm.
between the violence and Fiona, the hurricane, the fires, the flooding, femicide. It's a lot. How do you deal as a journalist? How do you work? How do you get a story knowing that the long term impacts and the short term impacts on the people that you're covering and people who are listening to you have?
That's an excellent question, and I think it's definitely something that I've noticed. I mean, although I haven't been there for quite 5 years, um, when I talk to people, and let's say I'm doing an interview about a hurricane and how people are preparing for another hurricane, what they'll say is, "Oh, we've been through enough. We're tired of these extreme weather events, or we're tired of having to kind of hunker down and prepare for the next thing." Right now, it's the fires and the drought. I just did an interview yesterday actually, about how farmers are making out with these intense drought conditions that we've been experiencing. But last year they were trying to deal with the flooding, as you say, and people died, and it was truly devastating. And so I think it's being aware of what people have already gone through and trying to be mindful of that. Um, and just being compassionate is really important. I think I try to lead with empathy and compassion in pretty much every interview I do, whether it's about something more trivial or whether it's about something as serious as some of the things, as you mentioned, that have been going on. Um, just try to lead with empathy and compassion, and realize that yes, it is hard times for a lot of people. People are relying on the food banks. People can't afford to pay rent, and it's troubling to see, but I think it's also really important in my role within the public broadcaster to highlight these issues and highlight these stories so that people know what's going on within their communities.
Of the stories you've covered so far, which has stayed with you the most and why?
Um, this is hard to answer because there are a lot that really do mean a lot and have left a mark on me. But I would say I was looking into different disability rights policies in Nova Scotia, and I had heard quite loudly from the disability community that many of them weren't happy with um, the criteria needed to apply for respite care, which, as most people know, is, there's funding available for loved ones who care for people with disabilities to basically take a break from their full-time caregiving role. And I spoke with this one family in particular, and they pointed to me what they saw was a flaw in this policy, which is that in order to qualify for respite funding in Nova Scotia, you must have a severe physical disability, an intellectual disability, or an IQ below 70. And they had raised that this is quite problematic in their opinion because IQ is not necessarily a reflection of your needs, your day-to-day needs. And so this one family in particular really stood out to me. It was this young girl named Rowan. She was 12 years old when I met her. She's lovely. She's funny. But she requires a lot of support, and her mother is essentially her full-time caregiver. She can't go to work. Rowan is her name. She needs around-the-clock care with eating, with hygiene, everything. And her parents simply just wanted a break. And so they had applied for this respite funding that's available for folks, but they had been denied 4 times because although Rowan is on the autism spectrum and really needs a lot of help, her IQ is too high. And so that was why she was denied. And so it seemed to me like this was an issue that maybe people don't know about, and I wanted to look into it a little bit more. And I realized that many other families in Nova Scotia were denied for that very reason. And so I spoke to them and I interviewed a handful of people, but Rowan and her family were the main people in my story, because I just thought it highlighted the issue to the fullest extent. And so I did the story, and the next day after it came out, Rowan's mother says she got a call that they had been approved for the funding after 12 years of applying and being denied 4 times. And I can't say that that was necessarily because of my story. I don't know that at all. She seems to think it is. Um, but it really showed me that journalism can have an impact and you can make a difference. And even though that's just one family, I was told as I was writing that story that the Department of Community Services, which is what it was at the time, was looking into the policy, that they acknowledged that it was outdated and they were looking at ways to replace it. Now, to my knowledge, it hasn't been updated yet. But again, it really showed me that there are so many issues out there that people don't know about, including myself. And the more you take the time to talk to people and learn about their struggles, it it can translate into something really meaningful.
That's a beautiful story, Celina. You've
Oh,
got me
thank you.
tears over here. There's, you might not know this, but a long, long time ago, I was an elected official, a politician. And let me tell you, I can guarantee you that your story made the difference. I know I have a good idea of how these things work. And wow. And again, the way you speak about that report and the research you did, I'm pretty sure you took Dr. Levesque's disability course, right?
I sure did. One of my favorites, and another reason that that's, a topic that I'm very interested in. So,
Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah.
I can because I know the course well. So there you go.
Yeah, full circle moment for sure.
Full circle moment. Now let's talk about. I mean, you're at the very beginning of your career,
Mhm.
r-
Early days.
early days. So what stories or areas do you hope to dive in more deeply in the future? Is Nova Scotia kind of those local stories something that what we consider local stories, local provincial stories, or is there something else that you're dreaming about?
I'm finding it extremely fulfilling to be a reporter in Nova Scotia right now. I really am. And a lot of people ask, is it your dream to, become an anchor in Toronto or, be a national reporter or go abroad or something. But at the moment, there are endless stories right here in Nova Scotia and in the Maritimes. And I think right now, local journalism is so important now more than ever. I mean, we're seeing cuts to journalism, local journalism, newspapers being shut down. And I think having a voice in your community means a lot. And so I'm really content here right now. And I'm really content to continue to kind of dig into these, I guess, hyper local stories in one sense. But at the same time, they're themes that are present across the country, right? Like I've done a lot of stories on inclusive education, for example. That's an issue across the country, intimate partner violence. Although I'm covering it from a local angle or a local perspective. Again, it's something that translates across the country. And so I'm feeling really good about where I'm at right now. And I want to continue to kind of dive into those stories. I've been covering a lot of education and childcare. And so I just want to see where it goes and, broaden them. Whenever you can broaden a story to reach a national audience is also a bonus because, when you see those hyper local stories end up on the national page, for example, or on the national news, it just makes you realize that these are all things that people across the country can relate to, and they're things that people are thinking about. And it's kind of our responsibility to inform and let people know that these are the issues and these are the things that people care about.
What advice would you give a current Mount A student or an incoming student who dreams about working in journalism and communications?
I would definitely say what Dr. Levesque told me, and I would say just go for it. Because if that's what you're truly passionate about, give it a try. I'll be honest and say it's not necessarily the easiest field to break into. A lot of it probably has to do with timing. There are certainly not hundreds and thousands of reporting jobs up for grabs at the moment. As I mentioned earlier, we're seeing those cuts to journalism and things like that. But if it's something you're passionate about, just do it and then see where it goes. There's also a lot of things that make a newsroom, a lot of roles and a lot of elements that make a newsroom go round. It's not just reporting or being on camera or being the host or what have you. I do a lot of jobs behind the scenes as well, in addition to being a reporter. And so there's lots of opportunities for people who have those different skill sets. So I would say go for it. Lean into it. And if it's truly what you want to do, you'll feel it. You'll feel the rush and you'll feel how rewarding of a career it can be. And hopefully it just all works out.
Well, we can't end the podcast without dropping a few CBC related Mount A names. So I'm in the studios at CHMA recording this podcast. This is where Ian Hannah-Mensing spent some of his time, where he kind of learned his craft right here in this radio station. So, you're a trailblazer in your own way, but there were a lot of other journalists that have come out of this institution. I think it speaks so well to that liberal arts and science ability to look at an issue in more than one way. I think you're the perfect reflection. So then, as I tell many or all of our podcast guests, especially the younger alum, we're really proud of you. Come
Thank
back and
you.
see us, and take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
A sincere thank you to the executive producer and director of our podcast, Kay, who is the quadrant intern at the Alumni Engagement Office. A sincere thank you to them, and especially to the fine folks at CHMA FM Radio who have made all of this possible by allowing us to use their facilities here on campus.
Mount Allison strives to be a safe, respectful, and welcoming place for people of all genders, diverse sexualities, gender identities, and gender expressions through education, programming, support, and advocacy. We prioritized upholding, maintaining, and honoring that environment during the creation of this podcast.